Computer. Okay. Hey folks, my name is Jessica Mashkovich and this is One Take with Jess. My guest today is Jim DeBetta. He is the owner of WeKnowInventing. I'm just reading my notes here just to not mush up any words. He has been in the biz of product, what would you call it? Product dissemination? From
that's funny. People say, they say, what do you do for a living? Right? They say, what do you do for a living? Or with my kids, they can never tell people what they do. He works with inventors, but I think it's product commercialization, inventor, project management. I mean, there's so many names. But basically, I work with inventors, right? I mean, that's the big tie-in.
And you've been doing this for over 20 years. You definitely have a lot of experience under your belt. You've been helping people. You're a mentor, you're a coach, you're the connection to get into retail. You're the one that people go to when they have an idea. And I swear to God, it must be 80% of people that just have an idea. And you probably get calls all the time like, hey, my cousin has a great idea, but
all the time
confidential and we can't tell anyone, but the inventor paranoia.
All the time, no matter who you say that. If I say I work with inventors, yeah, I had something, and they always say that they created like the TV or the internet or something, but they didn't act on it. I always that's always fun to hear when people miss their big opportunity. I'm like, well, you should, you got to find people like me and act on it. Take a chance, right?
Oh, totally. You know what? I'm going to join those crazy people and tell you that I created in my inventor notebook, I created the, it looks like mouth protectors like that you wear when you're playing football or karate.
Yeah, mouth guards.
But it's got toothbrushes like inside of it that kind of clean your teeth, and they rotate and they're interchangeable, and it's all scoped out in my inventor notebook from years ago. And then I saw it come onto like Facebook, and I'm like,
and you're like, yeah, your heart drops. You're like, oh no,
there's
that's
like
what happens.
Of them that
a lot of people, they miss that opportunity. I think they just don't know what to do. They don't know what to do first. And that's always been the biggest problem in the business.
Yes. And that's why I'm actually having you on, because I do run in a circle of inventors and creators and innovative people. And, having the right contacts is so important. And this isn't necessarily to bring people to your door, but this is to give people information. And I find myself a lot of times dissuading people from moving forward with their ideas. I don't want them to waste the time, the money, the tears. It's a hard process. And I don't know if I fully did your full introduction. You're also the writer of a book called The Business of Inventing. And so I think that was
they'll go to my website. Today you can't hide. People will find you and learn about you. So
I find that I'm moving people away from the direction of pursuing their invention because of the process that you and I know and love. And it's very rocky. It takes a lot of money. It takes a lot of grit, and it takes way more than people even anticipate to even get their product created, let alone on a shelf.
It's a very high risk business. I do the same thing. You almost have to, if you tell people like it is, it's almost like you're discouraging them in a way, but you're just giving them an eye opener to say, look, this is a business where more people fail than succeed. And you can't just, make a product, call up Walmart or Target. It's not placed in there in a week. And you're probably going to go through a lot of no, thank you, not interested. We've seen something like it before. Never mind the whole process of just developing the product, having a factory make it, packaging it. With your product, you're everywhere. I see your product all over the internet, and people think it's just easy, like it just happens. And yet it's years of work, a lot of risk, a lot of money, and a lot of people just don't make it through. So you're right. You have to sort of be discouraging and be realistic. But then there are people that will say, look, I've got a good idea. I take a peek and I say, look, I think it has potential. But at the end of the day, I don't know. It just matters what the retailers think and consumers think. But you have to, sort of play if you want to take that chance. But there is a high risk for sure.
Yeah. You know what? I forgot to mention another feather in your cap, that you used to work with Kevin Harrington, who was one of the original Shark Tanks. I'm sorry he didn't hang in there a little bit longer to see.
Yeah, it's funny because when I talked to Kevin in the beginning, the show was just starting, and he said, "Hey, Jim, I need somebody to come down." He goes, "I'm the infomercial king, but you're the retail guy and you have all those connections." And he says, "I'm on this show. It's called Shark Tank. I don't know if it's gonna do well, or I mean, look, now it's like this huge thing." But he could never have anticipated just how big the show was going to get. And then, of course, they just, how they've shifted over the years. A few different people have been on it, and they have guest sharks on. But, Barbara and Kevin and some of the people that have been on there as regulars, so to speak. But that blew up on Kevin even bigger than he thought. And I was around and got involved with selling a bunch of the products that were on the show that got funded, and even ones that didn't get funded. And so it was really fun to be a part of that in its first couple of seasons. And so that gave me a lot of exposure and experience to that side of the business that a lot of people just don't get to see.
Right. And you know what? It was such an entertaining show. We'd always watch it as a family and try and see what the valuation is of the company based on a couple of facts that they would state up front. So it was a good little business learning thing for the kids. But what did happen behind the scenes? Like when a product was picked, just like open up that little box, that mystery box. So a product was selected, if you're allowed, actually. Product was selected. It was decided that they're going to move forward with it and make a 20% investment. Here's my $100,000 for 20% of your company. What happens after to the product when it gets tossed over to you and they say, run with this?
Right. Well, I mean, I think this isn't sort of like inside secrets. I just think this is something that people just don't really think about. When those deals are done, they don't always happen the way you hear them on the show. So if it's 20% of your company for $100,000, what happens is after the show and after it gets back to Kevin's office, so to speak, right, the lawyers get a hold of it, and the sales and marketing teams get involved in it, and everybody looks at it and says, well, you know what, 20% is a little too much. $100,000 might be a little bit too much money. Let's do 10% for $30,000.
Oh, so a lot of times renegotiation?
Yeah, sure. And then when I get it, now we have to, a lot of times the product was already made or manufactured, but we go back to another factory and say, hey, how can we get this done for less, but equal or better quality? So some of those things change. The packaging might change on the product. But what I typically do at that point is I look at it and say, okay, well, let's get this in front of Costco, Target, Walmart, Bed Bath & Beyond, whoever it's going in front of. And a lot of times those deals are just so convoluted. It's not as cut and dry as you see it. Like, well, one of the sharks takes it and all of a sudden it's being sold a few months later. A lot of times those products never see the light of day, or they just don't wind up going the way you think it's going to go. The show at the end of the day is, it's a show, it's entertainment. And so you see one side of the camera as somebody viewing it, but behind the scenes, there's a lot that goes on that changes the whole situation.
I do think I know one tidbit, and I could be wrong, but I'm pretty confident about it, that the airing date of the show really is meant to market the product. So when the show airs, it will likely be that the product is already available for sale, because they've just aired it on that date after they've gone through all of the preliminary stuff of recreating it and sourcing it and getting it on the shelves, getting it available, stocked on Amazon, wherever they do put it.
You are right in that. Look, it's not, nothing happens on accident with shows like that. Everything is planned, coordinated. Definitely. I used to tell people, they'd say, Jim, do you think I should go and pitch for Shark Tank? Should I go one of the casting calls? And I said, listen, at the very least, if you get on, even if you don't get a deal, you're in front of millions of people.
Right.
So that, take advantage of your 15 seconds of fame or 15 minutes of fame or whatever it is, and run with it. There have been a few people that I've worked with, that have consulted with, that did not get a deal, but wound up having multi-million-dollar businesses just from the exposure. Whether it's just through consumers or retailers or buyers seeing things like that, because they watch those shows, right? It's a good place to find things.
Sure. Or other investors waiting in the wings and being like, what? You didn't get a deal, but I'll give you a deal.
Right.
Lots
and
of.
It gives them the confidence to go out and say, look, I've got something, even though I didn't get a deal, they like this, or they like that, or they gave me some good feedback and they made some changes, and they go back to make it more palatable for the average person, like whether it was just priced too high or it was just too overdone. Sometimes people overdo products, right? But just getting on the show and being on air gives
Yep.
people a huge marketing opportunity. So I'm like, take that and run with it. Just, if you don't have to get a deal. Sometimes getting a deal is tough because you're bound by the terms of what the network does and the
Right.
sharks, and you're better off being on your own sometimes.
Yeah. And did, I don't know if CBS still does it, but did they take a cut of the revenues as well, or they
Yeah,
used
there's a percentage. Everybody has their hands in everything. I'll just leave it at that.
Yeah. So I
Yeah.
guess the moral of the story is if you do have a good product and you're very confident in it and you've made a prototype or gone any length that you've taken it, don't be so quick to part with it. 20%
That's
of your
it.
company, 30% of your company, because
Yeah.
that's tough. Is it 20% of sales? Is it 20% of revenue? Is it, 20% of profits? Where's the calculation coming from? And you might be left with not a lot.
Right. And all deals are different. Each one is, and some people are more desperate than others to give up more. I mean, I have people emailing me all the time, inventors, saying, hey, Jim, I got this great thing. I don't have any money to do anything with it. I'll give you the whole company. I'll give you more than 50%. They just want to somehow cash in, even if it's a few dollars, just because they don't have an outlet. They don't know what to do or how to do it, or they just don't really have the money to do it.
Yeah.
So people will do anything to get their product out there, unfortunately, and sometimes to their own detriment, because as you know, people will lose a lot of money, put their savings into something without even knowing how to really get it across the finish line.
Yes. And you know what? I was very fortunate in my circumstance. I don't know if anyone knows out there that might be watching or listening. I'm the creator of the THROWBEE blanket poncho, and it was on QVC. One of my products was on the Today Show, and it was great. It was a great run, and I'm still running with it. But all of those steps were very, very challenging. And I don't think I would have been able to have made one step without a personal friend that I had in my local town who was a manufacturer of blankets and towels in China. So he was a trusted friend. He had a trusted factory overseas, and he was the one that started me off with my prototype and then my first order. And they weren't going to screw him over because he was already working with that factory. So as far as dollars and deals and quantities, it was a very, my risks were very mitigated when it came down to that. And a lot of new inventors who just jump right in and they Google, like sourcing or factory, they may get burned. They may end up having excess inventory that they over purchased for too much money sitting in a warehouse in Secaucus that they can't sell.
This happens all the time because
Right.
Inventing is very emotional for people, and they get very attached to their baby, and they make emotional decisions instead of making sound business decisions. So a lot of people will come to me already, it's just too far gone. They said, Jim, I have 80 grand worth of inventory, or I've done this and that, and now I'm stuck. And I say, send me a sample, and I look at it, and it's just, the packaging is just, it's just terrible, or it's just way too expensive, or it's not even, maybe it hasn't even been safety tested, depending on what it is. It could be anything that could really sort of derail the effort. But they get very excited, and they think they can do everything on their own. So they overlook all the experts that are out there. And again, it's not like, okay, it sounds self-serving, like I'm on here saying, well, you should come to me. Just go to somebody that is more knowledgeable than yourself. You can't be a manufacturer, a packaging expert, a graphic designer, a salesperson, a marketing expert. Nobody's all those things. So you have to, even in my business, right? I have a business. I'm good at what I do, but I don't know. I'm not an accountant. I'm not a lawyer. So I would reach out to people that know more than me, that hopefully you can trust, that can help you get along with your business. And I think that's a big failure point in inventing, is because it's an emotional business, people think they can do no wrong, or that their product's going to sell itself. Like, I've got this great thing and it's going to do $1 billion. And I'm like, oh, just no, please. You have to almost retrain their thinking, or help them manage their expectations, to say, look, if you can make a few grand a month with this out of the gate, that's a lot.
Yeah.
Most people don't make millions with their invention, but it's okay to make thousands a month. And whether it's a new living or an additional side income, there's nothing wrong with that. That's success in this business. But a lot of people shoot for the whole thing, and when they don't achieve that, they think it's a failure, or they just sort of just give up everything else. And that's not a good way to go into it.
You bring up a good point, and then my next question is really based on, how to reduce the risk of that happening. Just a little side story though. I was in touch with Kevin Harrington, the Shark Tank guy, and he and I talked about, actually, I think he passed me to Brian, his son, and we
Yes.
talked about infomercials and all of that stuff. And the upfront investment would only be like $20,000 to $50,000 to get an infomercial running. But the sales would be great and all this stuff. I know someone that actually did that, not with Kevin or his son, but with a different group. And they ended up creating the inventory, waiting for the infomercial to happen. There were so many delays and it didn't happen too quickly. I mean, you're out a lot of money from having created a massive amount of inventory to hopefully meet the demands of whatever success an infomercial might bring. And if it doesn't, then you still take back your inventory, but you're still out the dollars. So you wait a long period of time. It's very unpredictable. You lose a lot of control of selling your inventory and managing your current inventory because now it's dedicated for someone else. But yeah, so that was just another horror story. So I'm sorry that the podcast started with a lot of like dangers and horror about becoming an inventor.
That's right. People need to know that though. Like you're talking about infomercials, and I know this from the inside out, the success rate of infomercials is like less than 1%. So if you're going to, think about the handful of things that we see on TV late at night, there's thousands of things that get run that just don't meet the requirements to keep it on air, right? They call MER, right? So the cost to pay for the media to run it. So you're on a bunch of different networks, you're running 50, 100 spots a week. That costs money. But what if it doesn't sell? What if you only sell a few pieces? So, right, you've tied up inventory that you could have been selling on your own website or to other retailers or wherever else. You said 20 to 50, and that's not a lot. You could spend 50 to 100 or more on an infomercial, on production and everything else easily. And with less than 1% chance of success, it's risky. So, I know Kevin obviously is great at that. So he certainly helps the percentages, but just inherently it's a risky business. So it's tricky to try to tell somebody, look, you really should just do an infomercial. It's going to do great, when the reality, even retail, the success rate, probably 20-ish, maybe 30% at best. That's still tough, but that's better than 1%, right? So I always tell people, look, if you're going to put 20 grand towards something, I'd rather put it towards a retail effort or selling it on your own than to take a one-time shot at. That's like it's literally the equivalent of going to Vegas, throwing your money down on, black 13 on the roulette wheel and hoping for the best. That's so the odds. It really is. It's scary, but people do, because it's exciting to be on TV, right? Like you see your product, but then that wears off quickly when you only sell 10 pieces, right? And you've
absolutely. Throwing $5 down on black is way different than throwing 50,000 down on God knows what.
Yeah, so it's tricky.
Yeah. So, you've been in this for a very long time. So not to call you old or anything, but how has the industry changed? So you get a successful product, you really think it has legs. Now you go to like whether the sourcing of the production, the manufacturing, or more importantly, like the retail side of things, because you can create something and have it sitting in that Secaucus warehouse, but if you don't sell it, that's the big thing. So how have things changed when approaching retail or even online? Online might be a better venue now.
I'll use my own experience as a guy, and yes, this makes me sound old. So in the late 90s, when I had a sport optics company. So we manufactured and sold binoculars, telescopes, handheld magnifiers, things that were optical. And back then, the internet was just getting going. So really, no retailer at that time was selling online. So what we had to do was go to trade shows, and we would, like 8 to 10 a year, set up a booth, sit there for 3 or 4 days, and buyers would walk by and come in your booth, and you would hope the big chains would walk in. And if they were interested, you'd have to then later, a month to 6 months down the road, get on a plane, make an appointment with the buyer, go to their corporate office, sit in front of them, make a presentation. And that's it. If you didn't succeed that way, you really didn't succeed, because people didn't have websites back then.
Right.
Where else could you sell your product other than like at a local fair or flea market or something? So you had to go knock door to door to mom and pop shops to sell 2 pieces here, 5 pieces there.
Right.
So it
There were
took forever.
significant barriers to entry for sure. For sure.
Huge.
The
Now,
gatekeepers were very, very tight.
very tight, because that was the only way you could approach retail, is to either be at a trade show and hope they come in, or you would have to go and try to get an appointment with them. Well, fast forward 10, 15 years. Wow, like look at the internet. Now all of a sudden, all these chains are selling stuff online, and they have more space, right? Because they're not just limited to what's sold in their stores. There's only so much shelf space. But online, even though they don't want a cluttered site, there's still endless room. So they could test products. Like today, a lot of products get tested online or sold online exclusively. Not even so, like Target may bring your product through Target.com, which is usually a separate buying team. A lot of vendors don't know that there's separate buyers for a lot of these retailers. So like Target or Walmart, they have .com divisions, and they will just have buyers that buy for the website. But you could do millions on a website today. That didn't even exist. So there's more opportunity to sell. And because things are virtual, like today, you can email a buyer. Then we had to get on the phone and try to call them, and they never answered their phones.
They never answer their phone or their email.
They don't do it now, but at least you could email them, right? Or you could find them on social media. You can go on LinkedIn. There are other places to find them.
I like to park in their driveway and just wait for them.
Yeah, that won't get you arrested soon. But it's like that's how people did things. You had I've been in this long enough to say that was old school. This is the new way. But today, I tell people all the time, it is much easier to get your product exposed, whether through social media or to email or find buyers on these social media sites. That didn't exist. So it's much easier today. And again, you could set up your own website, and you could market your website, and you could market your product on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, wherever you want.
So what you're saying is that you really need to be a social media professional and really hone in on that skill before anything else, because the buyer's going to take a look at your Instagram, see how many followers, and that's sad. I got to admit, it is sad, because a lot of times with entrepreneurs, you're really focused on the innovative process, or whether the legal or the certain strengths. Someone may not have the ability to really ramp up their social media, and plus the social media is also short-lived. You start losing followers if you've fallen back on posting, or it's a little bit hard. And plus, if you're not a celebrity, then you really have a challenge where if your product is similar to something that the Kardashians just came out with, retailers and buyers may want to go with that direction because their social media is a lot more robust.
You have to, it's like he or she who markets best often wins. And sometimes the product isn't even a great product. It's just marketed well. Yeah. So, but I do think that the average inventor with a little knowledge, and even if sometimes if you hire somebody just initially to help you get your social media site set up, functioning, but you have to be on there every day. Sometimes people will set up a great Facebook page or an Instagram page, and they only post once a week. I'm like, you have to be on there every day. And you can't just be selling your product. You got to share information about what that product is about. So, right. So if you're selling clothing accessories, right, or you have to be on there, not just saying, buy my stuff, look how great it is, here's a sale. You have to say, here's why it's great to have these types of clothes in the winter, and here's different fabrics to learn about why they're superior to others. I mean, it doesn't matter what you're talking about. As long as you're providing information to people, they'll be interested. They'll visit your page every day or whatever. And then eventually, every so often you could say, hey, you know what? We're having a sale. You could run ads to complement your, whatever it is your product is. But a lot of people get that wrong. They just get on there and they just try to jam the product down people's throats. And yes, buyers do go on social media sites and they look for things. And they, like you said, they will check to see. You don't have to have a lot of followers. I just think you have to have a good, clean presence that looks like it's informative. And granted, right, if you have 100,000 followers, it looks a little better than having 100 followers. But you don't need to always be a celebrity. It certainly doesn't hurt. But most inventors don't succeed they succeed without the help of a celebrity endorsed product. You just got to be consistent. And it does pay sometimes to spend a few dollars hiring somebody initially to help you get acclimated to how to utilize social media to help yourself to get more presence and to grow the brand.
Mm-hmm. So for all of these people that are going through the pandemic, may have lost their job, may have decided to do a side hustle and decided that they're going to be an inventor or an entrepreneur or a life coach.
A lot of that out there.
What, a lot of that
There's a
out there.
lot of that out there. Yeah.
I know that you're also basically like a coach for people throughout this process. Have they all muddied the water? Because I used to call myself an entrepreneur. Now I'm just like, oh, that phrase is so diluted that it's like,
Yeah.
yeah, I need to come up with something different.
I don't know. I think, well, like you, like me, we've been around a long time. And I think what happens is people weed through all the, pretenders, the newcomers, and they tend to, it's like anything, like when we go shopping, right? Don't you, like when you see certain brands, they bring comfort, right? Like it could be like Campbell's soup or Kraft macaroni and cheese. There are things that you see new stuff come out and people will buy it. But those brands are iconic for a reason because people gravitate towards them because they've been around forever. People know what they're getting. It's trustworthy. And like a lot of people in my business, we've been around for decades and there's comfort in that. They know that, hey, Jim must be doing something right if he's been around for 20 plus years. And Jim must know his stuff because he's relevant. I see him on social media. I see him active. I see him doing podcasts. I see him writing. I'm doing what needs to be done to stay relevant in the business without really trying. I'm just in it every day. And so you're right. I think a lot of this is just, during this whole COVID thing, a lot of people did lose their jobs. And I got busier because a lot of people came to me and said, hey, yes, not only did they may not have lost their job, but it was an eye opener for them to say, you know what? I like being at home. I like working from home. I may lose my job, so I better do something else or find a plan B. And that has spurned a lot of inventors to even more to come out of the woodwork. But even more importantly, I think people are seeing that there's a lot of people who are trying to sell them things and offer them things during this time. But I think most people have seen through it. I think that in my business anyway, there's a lot of people who remain steady and people continue to gravitate towards us because they can see us online, they can check our credentials and know we've been around for a long time.
Mm-hmm. Have you found it more challenging to reach buyers during this time with many retail locations closing and certain buyers, maybe a whole staff of them are out of work?
It was like that. I think through the summer and early fall, it was tricky because there was a lot of transitional stuff going on. And I think a lot of them just didn't know what was going to happen. But I think like lately, the last couple of months, I would say it's been fairly normal, but it's actually easier for us because it's something like COVID has weeded out the retailers that probably shouldn't have been around anyway.
A while ago.
And it's unfortunate for the people that work there and that depend on those jobs. But the reality is that certain retailers probably were weak anyway. Corona didn't do this to their business. It was just the last straw. It was just that kind of like the last bit that pushed them over the edge. It exposed a lot of weak retailers, but it's easier. It's tighter. The big ones are still around. The Walmarts, the Targets are still here and they're still buying, but there's other businesses and retailers that are sort of reimagining themselves and coming back around by doing things differently. And those that adapt will be okay. But I'm not having any difficulty over the last couple of months getting in touch with buyers. I'd say it's basically back to normal in that regard for the most part. I mean, there's some that it's still challenging because they're still switching roles and adapting to store closings and just headcount being cut down. But I'd say it's probably 80 to 90% what it was prior to everything happening at this point anyway.
Are the big box retailers a little gun shy at this point, like Bed Bath & Beyond, Target, I was going to say Kmart, Walmart? Just because they don't want to take inventory in-house. So they may be reluctant to put out a purchase order, but they will give you a shot with a drop ship scenario. Or
I am seeing more drop ship opportunity. I would say they're just not going all in. There's more testing. Like we'll test it in a certain amount of stores. We'll put it online because the online component has become such a big deal. Look, if you walk into any of those chains today, they're still stocked with everything that was there before Corona started. For a while there, people were focusing on the toilet paper and the hand sanitizers and cleaners, and that was a big focus of what was being sold. But for the most part, you go shopping, everything that was there a year ago is there today. So the buyers have to keep buying. They have to keep selling and stocking those things that we were buying before. So I don't think that's changed, but you are correct in that because of financial reasons, and this is a wake-up call, they're just not going as deep when they buy. So maybe they're not going to buy $250,000 worth of product. Maybe they're going to buy $100,000 worth of product, and they're going to test it in limited stores to see how it goes first, versus going like, hey, we think this has got legs. We're going to just go all in and try it.
Yeah. Are there like 5 steps that you recommend to people that come to you and say, I have an idea?
Without getting into any detail, I think the biggest thing, the first thing that people have to do,
steps.
They have to, first of all, I always tell them, I say, look, understand the risks and rewards of the business. Here's the risks, here are the rewards. If you understand,
try and scare them away.
you have to, right? We were talking about it. You have to be realistic with them and just be honest up front with them. Like, look, this is a tricky business. You have a better chance of failing than succeeding. Here are the sort of the stats that exist. If you're okay with that, the next thing is you need to do a patent search. A lot of people just go online on Amazon. They say, well, I don't see something like my product, so there might not be a patent. I'm like, no. People file patents all the time and just don't commercialize the product, or they just give up on the business, or they die. I mean, all kinds of things happen. So I'm like, you need to do a patent and even a trademark search if you have a cool name or any name, and just make sure that you're free and clear to pursue the idea. Because a lot of people will skip that. They'll spend tons of money manufacturing and then selling it to only get a cease and desist letter from somebody that says, hey, I own the patent on that. So that's a big step that people have to do.
Right. And that's on the uspto.gov or whatever website.
uspto.org. Or they can just Google patents. There's a few places they can search quickly today. Google Patents is good, but uspto.org is a good. Sometimes I tell people, if you're not sure, just hire a patent agent or attorney to help you really check thoroughly, because it's not just as easy as putting in a product name. But if you're capable and you think you could kind of worm your way through it and check. But if you're going to build your whole business on the basis of a patent, it pays to have somebody double check for you. But still has to be done. And then if you get past that, then the next thing to do is to go out and get quotes. And I introduce inventors all the time to all the people I work with: product designers, CAD designers, manufacturers.
Dog.
That means they're warning me that my time's almost up. So
no, stay till dinner.
So you have to get quotes before you start spending money. Like anything else, don't you want to know how much it's going to cost you to manufacture, to package, to, all those things? You need to find out what everything costs. And then if you're okay.
Just backstepping for 1 sec. I know this is your list, but I would first tell people to put together a spreadsheet, even if it's on a piece of paper, and write down all of the things, leaving the rest blank. And this list includes what you just started to talk about: patent search. Right. And then if there's a cost for an attorney, that's another line item, because you'll see all these upfront costs really start to jack up whatever you could do on your own.
Yeah.
Great.
Well, what I do, I'm glad you said that, because what I do with clients, when people hire me to help them, coach them through the process when they just start out, I create a Google spreadsheet that I share with them, and it lists out every checklist item that they have to consider under every little thing, from setting up an LLC or a corporation to all the way up to, the manufacturing, the selling, the marketing. And it's literally a checklist, and it has like columns for all these items. Has it been addressed? Yes or no? Approximate cost of each component, everything. So that's something that I do for people, because people say, am I missing something? Is everything, because they forget, they don't think about things like, safety testing or whatever, things that they just they can't conceive of yet. So I make sure that they have everything in front of them, but that is part of that vetting process of getting quotes. So I would send them the list. I'd say, listen, these are the things we have to get quotes for. These are things you have to be aware of. These are things you're going to have to ultimately pay for. And so I take them through that. So that's good that you said that, because that is part of the process. And then from there, they get their quotes. And then, of course, it's then, you have to think about where you're going to get your money. Are you going to do a Kickstarter campaign or an Indiegogo? Do you have money in savings? Like, where do you have an investor? Where's that money coming from? Because the thing you don't want to do is build your house halfway and then you run out of money.
Right.
So if you know you're going to need 100 grand, you better know where your 100 grand. Don't say, well, I have 10 grand and I'll find the 90 later. That doesn't often happen. So you better have that money lined up already so you can see this through. Otherwise, you've just literally thrown money into a black hole and it's gone, and you have nothing to do with it. So I think those are the big things. It's a lot of it is, like you said, checks and balances, making sure you're getting quotes, making sure you understand the risk, making sure you understand how much everything is going to cost, and timelines too. People think it's going to be done in a couple months. I'm like, you're probably 6 months to a year just to get a product from that idea stage through like prototyping and manufacturing, because things go wrong, things get changed, and there's a lot of moving parts along the way to get it done.
Right.
And so there's that time component. I might let people know, just figure a year, like on average, that's how long it's going to take you to get to that, where you might have something that's retail ready. It can happen quicker, but it could also take 2 years. It just depends on how everybody's working together and any hiccups that come along the way. So those are like
what?
the basics. I said those are the basics, but you know, to kind of carry people through as to what they need to be aware of in the beginning.
Yeah. What are your thoughts on getting a patent versus speed to market?
Okay, I've been very vocal about this. I get a lot of pushback. Look, I ran a company that was doing almost 20 million a year on my own. I never filed for one patent. I'm all about speed to market. Now, if you're going to license a product, having intellectual property, having a patent is your leverage, right? If you go to a company and say, hey, I've got whatever, and I want you to license it, and you do all the manufacturing and sales and marketing, the only leverage you have is your patent, right? You own the rights to this product and you're leasing those rights to that company, and they give you a royalty in exchange for that. However, I've been a speed to market person. Most products have a short life cycle. They sell for a couple of years, 3 years, and they're done. That's most things. We're not talking about food items or household basics. I'm just talking about innovative products. So I'm like, listen, do a patent search. If you feel like you're going to build a legacy business, like you're going to be in this business for years and years, file patents. But if you just want to sort of get in and out, make your money, I wouldn't bother. That's my opinion. And I've never filed one, although I've helped people to get involved in that process.
Yeah.
I just say get out there, because patents are expensive.
They are.
You could spend
That was my
tens of
next
thousands.
question. What's the average cost of the patents?
Yeah, it could be, a utility patent, could be 8-10 grand at a minimum, up to tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands, depending on the complexity of it. And you know what?
It's more like 25,000 minimum, and then up to.
Yeah, it is. And people get this, they get the patent issued, and it usually takes a few years with the waiting time. And they put it online. They're like, look, I got my patent. And I'm like, but you haven't sold anything.
Right.
And they're proud of that. And that's great. And it is a nice thing to achieve, but it doesn't translate into money. And if you're in the business to make money, that patent is only good as the sales that come from, and the sales of it have nothing to do with the patent, because a lot of things, something that people don't realize is that no retailer says, this is patented or it needs to be patented. There's no requirement at retail. It may help give a little comfort, but the retailer is thinking like we're thinking, get it in, let's sell it like crazy. It's going to run its course, and then we'll move on. And then maybe you'll come up with a second generation of the product or something else.
Right. And, your patent, just for people who are wanting to get a patent to have their name on something and to make sure their product is protected, you're not protected as much as you think you are. There's lots of ways to get around patents. There are people that will make a product that varies so slightly, and you need deep pockets in order to go fight that.
That's exactly it.
Enforce your patent, and whoever has the more money wins. So if you're,
that's true,
dealing with a company that just constantly knocks off products, you're going to be in court for a very long time. And they may have underpriced you, and they may have gotten the best of you and captured the market before you were able to.
Yeah, that's a big piece of it. People don't understand. If you can't afford to defend against patent infringement, then don't even bother filing for one.
Yes, and the cost of defending against patent infringement, that could
fortune.
Be hundreds of thousands of dollars for 5.
And most people can't do that. They just can't do it. The average inventor cannot do that. No. So they're finished right there. They're done.
Yes. So I'm big on speed to market too.
Yes.
As far as there was something right before patents that I was going to ask you. Oh, what the hell was it? I can't remember. Oh yeah, I remember. So you get the product into retail. It now has shelf space. can you sit back and be like, cool, I won. This is
No,
exactly
no.
what I was hoping for. Go for it, Target, and make my product completely successful. I'm going to check out.
Yeah. Yeah, it's not like that. It's usually, now there are a few stories where somebody, I mean, there were Walmart millionaires, as you've heard, and people that will sell one thing because they're such a large chain. But the reality for most people is that you get something to Target, they test it with a small dollar amount. More often than not, it doesn't succeed. So they just stop buying it, or they buy it that one time. But if you get in there and it does well, chances are it's not going to do millions. It may do, usually in the six figures if it's doing well on average. But by the time you pay for your goods and all the cost involved, I mean, if you do 100 grand at Target, maybe you net like what you make, maybe it may only be 20 or 30,000. And you can't necessarily live on that if you've got a family and you have a home and car payments and everything. You can't
Right.
live on that. So I tell people you need to be selling as many retailers as you can, because also, even if you sell one retailer, they may just find another product and replace you 6 months down the road or a year down the road. And you're kind of depending on that one retailer, and they'll drop you. They don't care. It's all about money. If they're not making the kind of profit margins they need, or it's not getting the turnover, like the amount of pieces are being sold at a certain rate, they'll just say, thank you. We appreciate you being a vendor, but
And it's
see you
quick.
later.
It's
And
quick.
it's
They
over.
may only give you one season and that's it. And you're
That's
like,
it.
but you had it in the wrong store, or it wasn't coming up on the website. I mean, there could be
Right.
technical difficulties that
Sure.
also prevented the product from being found. Maybe it was supposed to be on an end cap, but it was buried in, the foot
So many reasons.
shelf.
Sell as many people as you can. That's what I tell people. Sell as many retailers, as often as many as you can.
Yeah.
And then at least if you're selling 6 retailers, 8 retailers, then you're probably making some money. But again, that ride will probably come to an end for most people. So if you have something that's done well, come up with version 2.0 and then version 3.0, because the retailers will say, hey, if we've done well with this, what else do you have? Or do you have a new and improved version? And you're already a vendor, so you don't have to go through that whole process of getting set up and all the paperwork. They could just reissue you a new purchase order. You fill out some new paperwork for like the description and information about that product, but the legwork is done. Now you just sell them something new, but you got to be in a lot of places, as many as you can. I mean, look, your product, your THROWBEE, it's in a bunch of places. I mean, see it in Bed Bath Beyond and all these other places. And that's how you do well with it. Because if you rely on just all your eggs in one basket in that regard, you could wind up not, really having a hard time.
Yeah. Something that I didn't know until recently is that when it is in retail, like say, for example, Target, you as the creator are still responsible for driving sales to Target to go get your product in order to make it the best showing. Like you would think that, okay, now it's going to be in the Target circular. It's a new product. They're going to want
Rare.
people to buy it for me. We had such a great relationship on the phone, but I just found out that you yourself are supposed to be the one that is continuing to market on behalf of Target, on behalf of the
Yes,
product.
they expect you to do it. A lot of these retailers ask for marketing plans before they even accept your product in. And that, again, this kind of circles back to our social media stuff, where this is where you have to be very prolific. If you get into Target, you need to drive business to Target, not to your own website. Target wants you to drive business to Target. And yes, that's when you got to start really building your brand and creating awareness. And that's a big problem, because people think, right, they're going to be in the Target circular, or they're going to be featured. And usually it's the big brands that get that, because they pay for that placement oftentimes. That's called co-op. And they pay for placement, and they pay for prominent positioning, and they pay for end cap space sometimes, or being at the register. I mean, you always see big brands there. Occasionally you'll see a startup brand, something that just think is going to do well. But again, for the average inventor, yes, you have to sort of think, if you're responsible for your own marketing success, and if you get into a big chain, you better be ready to market like crazy to drive awareness and traffic to those retailers and make it all about them. Otherwise, you're not going to get the kind of sales that they want, and then you're going to fall out of there.
Yeah. And it's weird that I haven't known that. I mean, I've been doing this for 10 years, and it's like the first where I was like, oh, I should have driven more volume to QVC or Bed Bath and Beyond or wherever. I don't know. You live and learn. I hope it's
You're
not
not
too
done,
late.
right? You're not done. When the sale is complete, you are far from finished. Let's put it that way. You don't get to rest. And
Yeah.
now the marketing work begins.
Yeah. So when someone has a new product and they've created a prototype, do you suggest that they jump in like with both feet to try and get someone, the legal aspect of things, the you aspect of things? I'm sure that you cost money. You're not
Yes.
just there giving out free advice, although he is there giving out free advice. If you go on Facebook and join any one
Right.
of his groups, you
Right.
constantly post so much information that is so very useful. Like people would pay top dollar to be advised and guided the way that you just post free information all the time. So
Right.
thank you for that.
Yeah. And I'd like to look, I mean, part of what I think is people in my industry or any industry, I mean, it's not a requirement, but I think it's good to share information and give people knowledge because we always say the best inventor is an educated inventor. I like when people come to me and they at least have a sense of the realities of what's going to happen and the costs. And yes, like anything, like any professional, there's a cost to working with me, but I will always guide people online and through social media and through podcasts like yours, which is very informative for people to just to learn the basics and what they're going to get into.
Mhm.
But at the end of the day, you're building a business, and any business requires an investment. You have to invest in talent, in people, like you said, sales and marketing and legal and all those things. So when people create a prototype, or even before they get to that stage, like we were talking before about getting quotes, finding out what it's going to cost. If that means you need an accountant, you need a lawyer, you need a marketing expert, a sales expert, find out what those are. And there are people out there that say, well, you can do all that on your own. You shouldn't hire people. I see that all the time. I'm like, well, but those are the people that usually fail because
That's me though. That's me. And hopefully I haven't failed yet. I mean, who knows?
right,
But that is me. I'm on the other side of it saying, don't go hire these people. Try and
right,
learn everything you can on your own. Like I wrote my own patent. I've done my own legal work. And then I hand it to the lawyer who charges me a little bit of money because I've already put in most of the
right.
work. But as much as you could possibly do yourself, because you will be out $1,000, $3,000, $600 that you paid for the local person to do marketing. And they only did
Right.
it for 2 weeks. And
You know what you have to admit, I think the thing is you have to acknowledge what you don't know. And like you
yeah,
said, it's very good. Like I said, it's good to be educated. It's good to be, like you said, go online, learn, read articles, talk to people, get free advice wherever you can, and do as much as you can do without damaging your business or delaying your business or
breaking the bank
overspend.
or mortgaging
Right.
your house or,
But
like,
at some point, for 99% of people that have succeeded in this business and others, they have hired people ultimately to help them get to another level. Like I said, I'm not a doctor, I'm not a lawyer, I'm not an accountant, I can't fix everything myself. I could learn and probably save some money because I'm doing some upfront stuff myself. Like I don't need somebody to tell me that inventing is risky, right? They don't need to pay me to tell them that. But if they want to get a deal done at a big chain store and make the most money from it, they're going to be better off with me because I do these deals every day. So if I help them make 20 grand in profit versus the 5 grand in profit they were going to make by the time Target gets done with them,
yeah,
wasn't that 2 grand spent with me? I'm making up a number better. Isn't that a great investment? And that's the kind of value that any expert brings. Like I could do my own taxes but I would rather my accountant do because my accountant is relevant. They know all the little
yeah, good
things
point. Good point.
that kind of thing.
Absolutely.
Or your lawyer. I can walk into court myself, I guess, but I have a much better shot at my lawyer who knows the judges and knows the legal system and knows all the nuances and details. I'm not, again, it sounds self-serving, right? But like any business and anything, when you become out of your league or you get into an area that is just foreign and you could wind up spending twice. Like when something breaks in my house, I mean, I could do basic, but if the air conditioner blows up, I'm not going to go online and watch a YouTube video and think I'm going to fix it, right? There's just things that people know better than you. And I want the air conditioning to work. And I don't want to go and try to fix it and spend 2 days doing it and then it
That's
doesn't
true.
work. So there's value to what you're saying. There's no question. Learn what you can, get educated, do what you can on your own, no doubt about it. But at some point, you're going to probably need people to get involved. And that's when you have to find people who are trustworthy, that have been in the business, that are good for that. And that's when that's what any successful business CEO, president, owner, anybody that's been in business will always tell you that they invest in their business in various ways. Maybe not in the beginning because they have to bootstrap or they just don't have the money.
Yeah.
But ultimately, to grow that business, you're going to need help. You can't do everything yourself. You just can't.
Yeah. Well, speaking of investing, that was a good segue. When should you like pull in investors or, get capital, ask for funding? A lot of businesses are there just to say, hey, I have a great idea and, I just need investors.
Well, angel investors typically don't get involved at the seed stage. Like if you say, hey, I have an idea and I want money, you're not going to get money from an angel investor like that, unless it's like a friend, a close friend or a family member. But I mean, true, like angels, like where we think of them as seasoned, accredited investors. But that's why Kickstarter and Indiegogo have become so helpful to investors, because you could just put your campaign up there and raise all kinds of money from a lot of individuals, right? And that's been a huge boost to the invention business. But I think that you pull in capital only when you think you need it. I mean, like you said, because you're giving up pieces of your business, you're giving up profit. If you just pull in investors because you just don't want to take the risk yourself, an investor will see that. They'll say, well, how much money have you put into your business, Jessica? And you'll say, well, nothing. I was hoping you would fund the whole thing. That's a turnoff for an investor. I wouldn't invest in somebody like that. I want to see that they've sweated, that they've suffered, that they've put in that, their own money because they really believe in what they're doing and they've done their homework to do it. So that's kind of how I look at it. But if you want to just take a shot without bringing in an outside investor, go on crowdfunding sites and, set up a really good campaign and try to raise the money that way. You have nothing to lose.
Yeah.
But a lot of my clients have gotten their start by raising, well into the six figures by doing a Kickstarter campaign.
What about products that have women-owned or are, created by minority-owned businesses or have some kind of altruistic give back as part of their hook, I'll call it? You
Yes,
find that those are more successful in the big box stores, or
it's a handful of retailers have programs for that, and I guess it allows whether it's a woman or a minority to get access to those buyers more readily or more easily than they would have, because there are programs now to encourage those groups of people to pitch their product. At the end of the day, it opens the door a little bit, but if the product isn't sound, if it isn't priced right, if it isn't enticing, it isn't packaged well, whatever, they're not going to land the product in that chain store. But I'm seeing more of that. Walmart's very involved in initiatives like that, and some other retailers where they have those types of programs. But those programs have been around for many, many years. It's just now with social media and other media outlets, we're more aware of it because we see it, but they've been around for a long, long time. And so they don't help the prospect of the product. It just gives you a little bit of a door opening, whereas you might not have had one before. So, but look, if you can take advantage of those opportunities, why not? I mean, I would definitely, and a lot of times I will pitch a product that I have to retail saying it is a woman-owned business, or it is a minority-owned business, or predominantly minority-owned business. It can't hurt, but where I know there's a retailer that looks for that, it can only potentially help.
Are retailers looking for products that have a conscience? Like a lot of people nowadays are buying things that have a compelling give back. Tom's had started it with the buy one, give one, and people really wanted to wear a Tom's shoes, or maybe it was just signaling to have Tom's on your feet. I
almost think that, I think it's almost, I don't want to say it's expected, where you see a lot of people say, well, we donate 2% of our profits to this. Or that used to be more of a catch 5 or 10 years ago. Today, it's almost like people expect you to give back a little bit, no matter what you do. Does it help? Again, I guess it's like the woman-owned business or minority-owned business. It will give you a potential, a little bit of an edge, but no buyer or retailer is going to buy something simply because you're giving back. I think because at the end of the day, even though it's a socially important thing that could be done, retail is about profits. And if the product, they don't see dollar signs in the product, I don't care if you're giving half your stuff away for free to somebody else, they're not going to put the product on their shelves. Now, they may get involved socially in other ways to get behind their own, like Target will donate money to schools, but that's a Target initiative. That's not a specific brand initiative. But again, all these things help. They can't hurt, but they're not the reason why a product gets placed. Like people say, well, I'm going to give, X amount of, and they think that's like the lead in to tell the buyer. I'm like, no, that's a little extra at the end. We tell the buyer, they got to like the product first. And then those things are, if the buyer's kind of wavering and they're just not sure, that could maybe push them over the edge to say yes for certain. But it's not an initial deciding factor at all. I don't believe, from what I've seen anyway.
What are you doing now that's like your bread and butter? So let me rephrase the question. Is there, I guess, two parts. Number one, is there a product that you created from inception to success? And what was the secret behind that? And part two is, what are you doing nowadays? Is it just mentoring and coaching and guiding, or are you getting your hands dirty in putting people with retailers? And
yeah, good question. Well, I guess my old three questions wrapped up in one. My old optics business, which I was involved with for 10 years, so it took me into the 2000s. We got involved in we didn't invent the binocular, or I'd be floating on a yacht in the Caribbean every day if I did. But we created our own versions of binoculars. So we had an electronic zoom binocular, and we had the world's smallest full-size binocular. So we reinvented products, and so those are things that I got to be well known for back then. And we did a lot of business with all the major retailers because we created or recreated. It's like a lot of products. Most things aren't new; they're just updated or improved versions or different versions of something else. But today, fast forward, I do all the things you say. I coach, I consult, I literally daily sell products for people into retail chains for them. I project manage. I get involved. Involved. My hands are in almost everything in the world of inventing, except I'm not an expert in everything. Like, okay, I don't make prototypes, but I connect my clients to people that are trustworthy, that do a lot of my work for me, for my clients. So I'm like I guess a jack of all trades, master of a few, maybe.
I didn't mean to say none.
But the retail one is the big thing for me. And also just the project management. Like I said, setting up Google Sheets, getting people introduced to the right service providers, and then they run with it. I just stay involved in those email conversations to kind of throw some pointers in, or say, hey, package designer, I change this or tweak that. But I let the client interact with the service provider, and I just sort of stamp and say, yep, it looks good. I think this is great for retail. But I let the inventors do a lot of the work. So project managing their ideation to commercialization process, they pay me to do that, to keep everything flowing, to keep all the service providers moving, to keep, like any project manager, like a foreman on a job, or a construction manager on a construction site. They're not actually getting in there and hammering nails every day, but they are making sure that all the people that are involved are getting everything done right. And then, of course, I said like the retail part, which is, and I've gotten more involved in licensing over the last few years, where I'm helping people to negotiate licensing deals for people, and even getting, introducing their products to companies that I know to get them licensing deals. So that's sort of, and now this year, by the way, no one knows this yet, but I'm going to be releasing some courses, where one will be, and I won't get into details because I don't even have all the details yet, but soon I'm going to have a course that people can just download and learn about all the phases of inventing. And it's sort of a self-study thing. And then there'll be the same version with hey, you can talk to me, it'll be more money, but the first one will be a very inexpensive course for the masses. And it'll educate people the way we were talking about. It gives them a trustworthy, experienced view on every phase of the process and what they need to know, basic facts, so they can go into the business themselves and feel comfortable moving forward with it. So trying to get more course driven, download driven, sort of, what people want today. People want more videos. I'll be doing videos, a lot of videos coming up during the year, just more informational stuff that people can get quick sound bites, bits of information, and then, move forward from there.
That's good. I think they do want that. And I hope that it doesn't become like a, I once did like a little article on microdosing inspiration where people just continue microdosing on podcasts and
Mhm.
Gary V and
Yep.
all those things that you have in your ear to start the day in order to get you going.
Right.
But then when it comes time for rubber to meet road, you're like, nah, I'm not going to post. I'm a little too shy. I don't want to.
Right.
And you're just continuously microdosing on other people inspiring you, and then
Right.
you don't do anything with it.
Right. That's the thing. You have to put it into action. That's why I tell these inventors all the time. I'm like, if what's holding you back is lack of knowledge, there's plenty of knowledge. If it's money, that's another issue. But a lot of people just say it's not always the money. It's they're afraid. They don't know what to do. And I'm like, I can tell you that in 5 minutes what to do. But there's so much information on the internet that they don't know who to trust sometimes. So they
That's
see a
true.
lot of
That is
stuff.
true.
So that by being relevant and being out there, a lot of people have come to just, like you said, like a brand. They feel comfortable with me because they know I've been doing this my entire adult life. I've done it. I ran my own company. So I'm not just preaching from the ivory tower, like a lot of people in this business will do. They say, here's how you license, here's how you something. They've never done it.
Right.
They're
Right.
just taking stuff they've learned themselves and they're regurgitating it.
So
I've
you've
actually
never suffered from imposter syndrome when it comes to this because you've
right, because I
done it.
actually did
Yeah.
it, and I did it old school, the hard way.
Right.
And most people haven't done that in our business. So I've done it, so I can say not only this is how it worked and how you suffer or could have suffered through it, but here's how it's working today with all of the years that I've been doing this.
Yeah. What about the buyers that may change and all of a sudden it's a new face or a new name and they're 22 years old and they're like,
Yep.
new? What?
Yeah, it happens all the time. That's why my relationships are higher up. It's not just the buyer, it's the VP of merchandising or the divisional merchandise manager. I keep a lot of relationships high up because the buyers do come and go, but those higher ups tend to stay longer. And so if the buyer leaves and the new buyer doesn't, I'll go to the higher up and say, hey, can you introduce me to the new buyer for housewares or something? And they'll do an email introduction, and that gets me in the door quickly versus an inventor who doesn't know how to do that or doesn't have those relationships. They just won't get a response most of the time. So
when do you get down? What frustrates you? What puts you in a slump? At what point in this process or in this industry? Because I have my mopey times and I'm like, you know what? Screw it. I don't need any of this.
I think the hardest thing to do, most of it's very positive for me, but if there's a downside, it's managing inventors' expectations. They think it's going to happen quick. They think it's going to be cheap, and they think it's going to, their product's going to be developed in a few weeks, sold in a few weeks, and they're going to be making millions. Talking them down off that ledge is frustrating because sometimes I get people who hire me and then they tell me what to do and how to do it and that they're right. And I'm like, why'd you hire me? If you hire me, let me do my thing until you see that it's not working, right? So that's and I don't get that often, but that if there's a downside, so I've learned to manage people's expectations up front. Like we started out by saying, I scared them a little bit. Here's what's going to happen. Here's how long it's going to take. I don't care what your next door neighbor told you. I don't care what someone else you read on the internet. I am telling you it's going to take this long. It's going to cost more than you think. And you're going to be in for a ride. So if you can handle all that, and you're ready for that, and you're patient but impatient because you need to be a little impatient because you need to move it, but you have to also wait for things. If you're good with that, and then very occasionally they'll say, "Yep, I'm good," and then 3 weeks later they're like, "Is Walmart answering? Why are we in Target? What happened to?" And I'm like, no, so that kind of gets frustrating.
Yeah.
But luckily, that's only here and there, and not the norm.
Yeah, I hear you.
So, yeah.
Well, I'm going to ask that question from the fun game that I have.
All right.
This is a new thing that, wait. Okay. This is a new thing that I started doing with my family and friends, and I wanted to add it to the podcast because it is thought-provoking. So there's a game called Table Topics that I discovered at Goodwill of all places. I bought it for $3.49. Nice. I think it sells on Amazon for like $25, but it's beautiful.
You got a deal.
Like a lucite box and everything. And it's called Table Topics. So the question for you is, if you could be brilliant in one subject, which would you choose? Brilliant.
I think, I would think it would be interesting to be like in medicine, like to
That's my answer. Go on.
or like a cancer or disease, like to be able to figure out what everyone else hasn't been able to figure out. Like, what's the secret thing that all these scientists and physicians and researchers have missed? To be like, to bring that kind of, happiness or positive, like whatever it is, like to make people live that way by just having that secret to figuring out how to control those types of things, like deadly disease. I think that's my off the cuff answer. I think that would be a kind of a cool thing to be able to
That's a
do.
good one. I like that. I want to be House. Remember that
Yeah,
show, House?
right. Yeah,
Dr.
yeah,
House?
sure. Yeah.
I would love to be House.
Yes.
I
That's
like
funny.
that. So you want to be in medicine. I'm going to ask you one more question. What's the most important qualities you look for in friends?
I think people that are, I think, genuinely sort of loyal. Like they're not just your friend when they need something, or if just everything's just okay. But if you really need somebody, and not that you go into a friendship saying, hey, part of the requirement is if I need you, you help me. But I think someone that would genuinely sort of stick by you sort of unconditionally, if they believe in who you are, I think to me that would be like not a fair weather friend, somebody who's truly dedicated to being there as a true friend, no matter what the circumstances are.
Yeah, I like that answer.
Yeah.
Mine would be that they just need to be heading in a similar direction as me.
Mhm.
They can't be toxic or weighing you down
Right.
constantly, even if they're the most loyal person. If you're just
That's
never
true.
happy,
Right.
it's like, I can't do it.
Yeah, I agree. No, you don't. You definitely don't want like negative daily is just not
Yeah.
something you want to be around. I agree.
Yeah. So they'll have to be a short list of criteria when it comes to friendship. And it's weird when you're an adult, you're like, you have to make new friends with each turn. You used to have your kids' baseball team friends, those parents.
Yes, you're right. That's true.
Then you're going to move and you're going to have to establish some other kind of neighborhood friends. And, you
Yep.
need to set like a little short criteria sheet
Yeah,
and
you
plan it out.
evolve, and you also get a little more, I think, picky as you get older. You start saying your list does become shorter, but it's more definitive. It's like, hey, I'm not going to deal with people that are negative. I'm not going to deal with you. Just when you're younger, you're sort of friends with whoever comes
Everyone,
across your path. And now you get older, you're like, I don't want to deal with people's drama, nonsense, and you just say, right, if you're not like this, just move on. Like,
Yeah.
and that because you don't need it. You get tired of it, and you've lived your life, and you just don't want you just want to kind of relax a little bit as you get a little older, and not, I have 4 kids. They're still, ages from, middle school through college, but it's like you could start seeing how they're growing up, and it's like, all right, I don't need all that other stuff that, I'm good. I just want to relax and enjoy them and do my work stuff and whatever else. And I don't need the excess stuff that you would put up with, 20 years ago.
That's true. All right. Well, I mean, I have an entire box of questions that we could do this again, like with some happy hours, bring the spouses and whoever,
Oh yeah. Oh sure. I
else
bet.
is in your house, all the kids, we can get together on Zoom and do this all night long. But are there any closing remarks that you may want people to know if they've hung in there this long? You and I know.
Yeah, I know it's a lot. Yeah, this hour and 20 minutes. We've been going. Well, hopefully people.
I knew it was going to be like a good time.
Yeah, it can happen, right? I think that overall, I think that the thing to leave people with is, as it pertains to this business anyway, like you said, is managing those expectations, understanding before you get into this business, which we said is very emotional, just to be aware of what's involved. Don't get caught up in the hype or the excitement of thinking you have the next greatest thing, and overlooking the fact that this is a real business.
Yeah, and don't get suckered. Don't get suckered into these invention seminars that just pull you in and want you to sign.
People will tell you what you want to hear when it comes to that. They'll make you feel happy and empowered and like you could do anything. But the reality is when you wake up the next day, this is a business, and it's real money. It's real time. The effects, if you fail, can be devastating to you, your family, or whatever. You just really need to know what you're getting into and hear it and accept it and understand what can happen, good or bad. And if I can do that, or people can understand that, then they can proceed with some confidence. But if you go into this thinking you can't fail, I got the greatest product, everyone's going to love it, then usually you're setting yourself up for a disastrous situation.
Right.
Yeah. So yeah, it's been good.
That's good. Bring the camera up so it's like level with your face so I can get a good like still shot. Okay, now smile. Cool. That'll be our still shot when I put the thing up there. And then check out your tripod.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, next time I'll have it out. This is yes, I'll dig it out after the holidays. But hey, I appreciate it. I'm glad we got to catch up.
Yeah, this was fun.
And yeah, I can, if you want, I can, once Carmen and I get our schedule, I can get you on. We can talk about your product and get you on there. We get tens of thousands of people that listen to our show.
Fun.
Yeah, it's more than I thought it would be, but we've been doing it for so long. I think it's catching on. But yeah, we can get you on there and have you talk about THROWBEE and just what's going on with you as an inventor, and the challenges and pitfalls. And I think people love hearing from success stories like you. So we always have guests on. So
that would be great. I welcome the opportunity.
Yep, we'll get you set up. So
awesome.
Let me know when you get a copy of this, so I'll share it, of course, across all media platforms, and
sure.
So let me know. Awesome.
All righty. Take care. Have a great day. Let's talk again.
You got it. Talk to you soon.
Bye-bye.
Bye.